So a friend of mine is learning JavaScript, and they're currently working on what's called the Fibonacci challenge. So I said, okay, send it to me and I'll solve it too, and we can compare notes. They gave me the great idea to make a video about the process of coming up with a function to solve this particular problem. Because really the true value here is learning how to think about solving these problems, not so much the problems themselves. It's highly unlikely that a company is going to ask you to come up with a function that can give you a sequence of Fibonacci numbers. It's possible, but not likely. But they will definitely ask you to solve some kind of problem. And it's good to know how to do that, right? So let's get started. What is the Fibonacci challenge? First, Fibonacci was an Italian mathematician that came up with a sequence of numbers that is now known as the Fibonacci sequence. It goes like this: 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, etc. The way this sequence is determined is that it follows a pattern that the next number in the sequence is the sum of the previous two numbers. For example, 1 plus 1 equals 2. 1 plus 2 equals 3. 2 plus 3 equals 5. 3 plus 5 equals 8. 5 plus 8 equals 13. So on and so forth. The challenge is to write a function, we'll call it Fibonacci generator. And this function takes a parameter in which n, which is what we'll call this parameter, is equal to the number of values in the sequence. For instance, if it takes a parameter of 3, then the output is going to be an array containing the sequence of numbers 0, 1, and 1. If it's 5, it's going to be 0, 1, 1, 2, 3. You get the picture? So that's the setup. Now we're going to take a look at one of my favorite playgrounds that I use for working on JavaScript functions, and it's called jsband.com. I'd suggest trying it out. It's really simple for things like just working through JavaScript functions like this exercise. So let's set it up from here. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to name our function. We're going to call it Fibonacci generator, and it is going to accept a parameter. We'll call it n. And then after this function, we're going to go ahead and console.log it, and we're going to invoke the function. Let's give it a parameter of 10, just so that we got a good size array here to take a look at and to validate that it was working right. So like I mentioned before, this function is going to return us an output that will be an array. But we're accepting an input that's a number. So we're going to have to create the array ourselves. So we'll start out by declaring this array. We'll call it fibarray, and we'll just set that equal to an empty array. Through the process of the work we're going to do in this function, we will be adding things to this array as they're calculated. So to do this, I think the easiest way, particularly for a beginner, is going to be a for loop. And this for loop will iterate the number of times that our input parameter tells us to. So, if somebody calls this function and it's they're putting in a number 6, then we're going to iterate through this calculation 6 times. Okay, so to do that, we're going to let I start out equaling 0, because that's the first index in an array. We are going to make sure that through the process, we're only going to do this while I is less than our parameter n, which will be the total length of the array. And each time that the array or this for loop iterates, we're going to increment this index once. And that's what that I++ denotes. Okay, so what do we know about the Fibonacci sequence? Well, each number is the sum of the last 2 numbers, right? So, well, what about the numbers that are lower than the third number, right? If it's the first number, we can't go to the last 2 numbers. If it's the second number, we can't go to the last 2 numbers, right? So we just got to know that the first 2 numbers in the Fibonacci sequence are 0 and 1, which fortuitously, the first 2 indexes in an array are also 0 and 1. So, if our iterator equals 0, it'll be the first one, so we're going to put it into our array. If our iterator equals 1, then it's going to be the second number in the Fibonacci sequence, so we're going to put that into our array as well. So I added a little logic here. If 1 is less, or I'm sorry, if I is less than 2, we're just going to go ahead and push those into our array. That's how we're going to determine our first 2 numbers. Now from there on, our third, fourth, however, to the n number, we are going to do some other logic. Like I said before, to determine a number in the Fibonacci sequence, we add up the sum of the previous 2. So we'll declare this constant. We'll call it sum of last 2. Well, they're not really digits. We'll call it numbers. Sum of the last 2 numbers will be our constant. And to determine that, we know that if we take an array and then tell it what index we want, then we'll get what's in that index. So to get the arrays we want, we're going to look at the length, the current length of our array, and if we subtract 1 from that, that's going to be the last element in our array. In this case, the last number. Since we want the sum, we'll do that again, and we'll do fibarray to the index of fibarray.length minus 2. So that'll be the second to the last number. So we'll take these 2 numbers and just add them together, and that is going to determine what our next number is going to be. So once we have that, we can just push that onto the end of our array as well, and that'll give us our next number. And we'll keep doing this throughout as long as our for loop keeps going, we're going to keep doing this logic. As soon as it hits n, the for loop is going to stop, and then we'll jump out of it and we'll return what we have for the array. So this here what I got should work. But let's go over here and run it to make sure that it does. Okay, so see, we run it. We got 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34. That looks pretty Fibonacci to me. Let's make sure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10 digits. So our function has done what we wanted it to do. And that, my friends, is the Fibonacci challenge. Thanks. Hey y'all. If you like what you're seeing here, you know what to do. Punch the like button. If you want to see more of it, subscribe. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching and have a great day.